calligraphy is such a um, self-care activity for me that I try to balance not doing more business because I don't want it to take away from the fact that I love it as an art form. I love it because it gives me a lot mentally with my overall well-being, and I don't want to get capitalism to take that away.
Absolutely. Hey there, and welcome to Work is Third, the podcast that is all about indulging in rest, setting boundaries, finding joy, and putting yourself first. I'm Dawn Hunter, your host, and I am so excited you're here. Today's guest is someone who embodies grace, grounding, and glowing energy, Kimberly Green Warren. Kimberly is a public health practitioner, educator, entrepreneur, and an artist of intentional living. In this conversation, we talk about her sabbatical and what it taught her, the power of perspective, her work in the education space, and the surprising wellness tool that changed her relationship with rest, calligraphy. If you've ever felt pressure to produce or perform, or struggled with saying no, even when your body said yes to rest, this one is for you. Kimberly invites us to reflect, reset, and reconnect with ourselves, with our purpose, and with the joy of slowing down. If you want to skip around, I've added 3 section markers in addition to the regular chapter markers. But honestly, you're going to want to stick around for the whole thing. All right, let's dive in. Hello, Kimberly, and welcome to Work is Third.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
I'm really glad you're here. When we first connected at APHA, the American Public Health Association annual meeting, which was it last year?
Last year.
Or 2 years?
Yeah.
Why does it feel like it was 2 years ago?
I know why, but I'll save that for another time.
Right. That's another conversation. But I just remember thinking I loved your energy and was so excited to get to know you better. And so I'm grateful that now that has arrived at us having a conversation with each other today.
Yes, I'm so excited that the world connected us in this way and that we can have this conversation.
The first thing that I want to do before we dive into the conversation, and actually just to get us rolling into the conversation, is to ask you for a word to describe how you're doing today.
One word is very difficult. I have lots of emotions, I think, running through me right now. But I think today in particular, I would say I'm excited because my parents are coming to visit me tomorrow to celebrate my mom's birthday. And I am in such a season of gratitude and my mom is literally, people say it she's my bestie. We're very close. And I am just in a season of gratitude. And I'm just very excited to celebrate her birthday with her. So I'm feeling excited.
Excited is a great word, and for a good reason. But I also heard you say that you have a lot of emotions going on.
Yes.
What are some of those other emotions?
So I think about work. I have a pretty big event that I have to MC tomorrow. So I'm someone who I want to be prepared and I want to make sure I do the job well. So I think there's, I wouldn't even say anxiety, but adrenaline, right? There's adrenaline associated with wanting to do that well. So that's just the work side of me versus the personal side of me. And then I mentioned I have a lot of emotions because I also just got off the phone with one of my best friends who lives in LA. We've been besties since high school and we keep in touch obviously, but we're so far away from each other. So after I always finish chatting with her, I'm always why don't we live closer? So kind of I don't know, one of those things is just accept life for what it is. But we chat so much, but still every time I get off the phone with her, I'm always that sucks. Why does adulting feel this way, right? Why can't we be super close in geography to folks that we love the most? So that always gets me in a mood too.
I haven't really thought about it in that way where you talk to someone that is at a distance from you and you're left feeling not necessarily a positive, not really a negative emotion, but where, there's a sense of loss at the end of the conversation just because you're not together.
There is. And I will tell you, she just sent me a meme last week about, a reel from social media on a woman who cried in the airport parking lot because she had to drop off her best friend. I'm that's us every single time. Every single time. It's just, we just grew up together and been through those foundational years together where we were roommates all throughout college. all 4 years. And so when you're that close to someone and you spend all your time with someone, and then, however many miles it is between DC and LA, and both of us feeling so set in our careers, are like, I'm not moving to LA and she's not moving to DC. It's just something that we always grapple with. We always talk about how much we hate the distance, even though we chat all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You make me think about one of the challenges of friendship these days, or probably an eternal friendship problem, is just when you know people at a certain point in your life, and then you have a certain kind of relationship with them, very deep, because you live together, you grew up together, and then you no longer live together or near each other. How does that change your relationship? What are the ways that it makes your relationship evolve?
I mean, that's why I said I'm like in a season of gratitude, because at least with my relationship that I have with my best friend that lives in LA, like any single time that we're together, like she came and visited me in DC in March, it feels like I won $1 million. Like the opportunity for us to go somewhere, grab coffee, lunch, not feeling rushed, and we have a whole day to just like chat, girl talk. It feels like I won the lottery, So it has me. I'm just so much more conscious of the quality time I can spend with people that I love, which probably ties to my parents too. And why I'm so grateful that they live in Atlanta, and I'm just grateful that I can spend a weekend with them, which I don't get a lot, So that's the impact it has on me. I value coffee dates. I value us being able to go to dinner, us being able to see each other in the flesh. I don't take any of that for granted. And so, yeah, that's how it shows up in my life for sure.
How did you arrive into this season of gratitude? How long has this been going on? How did you get here?
How did I get here? That's a really interesting question. I think naturally when I think about it, you want to say COVID, but I also just don't think it's COVID itself. I think it's also living in 2025, which is dating this podcast, but it's living in 2025, living the repercussions of COVID and like what that looks like in all of our lives and the way it's fundamentally shifted what we value, how we do things, how we work. It has forced me to really zone in on like what's in front of me. And I just don't take anything for granted. I am so appreciative of the people in my life, and I just feel like COVID has forced me to remember that things could be different tomorrow. And it has also forced me to remember how quickly things can change. And so because of that, I do not think that I am immune to any of that. I mean, we all lived through COVID, but anything that happens in my life, things could be very different tomorrow. And so it just has forced me or ingrained in me to really focus on the present. And that has forced me to be more appreciative for the people, the things in my life that I should be grateful for.
I was talking to someone else recently about the exact same topic, was just we all went through a big metamorphosis during COVID, but of course there are other life events that also can force us to change our perspective and have more gratitude for every day. I appreciate your story, and it makes me think of like, wow, this is something that it sometimes takes some kind of impetus for us to get to a point where we're grateful. And what if you never get that impetus? Like, what if nothing ever nudges you in the gratitude direction?
No, that's such a good question. This kind of ties into, I don't know, we may get into it. I'm also really big into journaling. And so one of the prompts, which I'm probably getting into woo-woo territory for people listening, they're like, oh gosh,
Let's go there.
Here she goes talking about journaling and reflection, right? But one of the prompts that I think really help ground me a lot is whenever you can get perspective on your younger self and your future self. So thinking about your 80-year-old self, what is your 80-year-old self going to be grateful for when they look back? And then also looking at your younger self, any prompt that's just around what would your younger self be grateful for in this moment? And that alone, regardless of your circumstances, you can answer that. I could go on, but my family, we've had between my husband and myself, we've lost our grandparents in the last year. And I know my grandma, if she's looking back, she passed away at 88. Looking back, she valued the times that like we were all at her house together. I'm sure all of us are showing up at somebody that we love's house, regardless if it's your grandma, your friend, whoever. And whenever you're 80, you're going to look back and you're going to remember those times, and like you're going to find gratitude in that moment, because you're going to get a chance. There's going to be a time where you can't get that. You can't get everyone in the same room, and you may not have your like mental faculty to understand or to physically to be what you want. And so it's like there's so much that you can find value in. And then also just again, like your younger self, there's so many dreams that we all have when we're young. And you may not be living your dream life right now, but there's so many things that maybe your independence, maybe you wanted to try something, or you always aspired to do something, right? And you may not have done that, but I'm sure there's something in your life right now that your younger self could be proud of or grateful for. And so I kind of use that, like, that's kind of the perspective I use sometimes to really ground myself.
That's a really great suggestion. I did a meditation on kind of understanding my younger self once, and I was just visualizing what it is that my younger self loved to do.
Mm-hmm.
And the vision that came up for me was of me at like 12 years old, sitting in my backyard. I had my pitcher of homemade lemonade and a stack of library books, and I would put a lawn chair out and I would sit in the backyard and drink my lemonade and read books. And it was the nerdiest 12-year-old ever, probably.
Yeah.
But then it made me say like, oh, is this version of me still alive somewhere? And am I doing enough for her? Yeah. And then it really also made me look at my calendar and say, I'm doing too much of stuff that is not sitting in my backyard reading a book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And kind of tied to that too, it's like, how many times do you find yourself in your backyard reading a book or just drinking lemonade? And you could look back and be like, my younger self, this is all they wanted. And I'm sitting here doing it right now, you know? And so, yeah. And so I think about it a lot too. And I know we both own our own business. And I think that also has made me have like a sense of gratitude too, because even 5 years ago, I dreamed of owning my own business. I have my own business and I love it. And I get to do amazing work with people I love, and, to work in my zone of genius. Every day I get to get up and do that work. I'm so grateful. I dreamed of that 5 years ago. It didn't seem possible. I have no reason to not be grateful, despite whatever project I'm working on, if I like it or not. This was a dream of mine, and it's happening. So yeah, so I can pretty much find gratitude in most things because I give myself context of what life entails.
Well, I want to ask you two things in follow-up. One is, can you explain to listeners what zone of genius is and what your zone of genius is? I know what it is, but we're gonna talk about it. And then really, where did your vision come from 5 years ago that you wanted to be a business owner?
Okay, so let me see if I can answer this succinctly. Zone of genius, you can tell me if you heard about zone of genius the same way I did, but The Big Leap, A. Hendricks, I believe, is the author of the book The Big Leap, and a part of like The Big Leap. You all can Google it, but it's a lot about like the mental barriers that we all put in place before we can like take like the big leap, and way more than that. But part of that book really ties into your zone of genius. Also, there's like a zone of competence and competence, and I'm missing one more, but highly recommend just Googling it. It's a quadrant. And so within the zone of genius, that's focusing on you, all of us as individuals, unique strengths, interests, skill sets that like we are uniquely qualified to do because it comes naturally to us. And we're naturally better than other people when it comes to this. And that's not about competition. I'm better than you. It's just that when things come naturally to you and you're interested in them and they're a skill set of yours, you tend to be better at that than the average person. Yes. So that's kind of like your zone of genius. And the more that we stay in our zone of genius, there's loose evidence that we can find more fulfillment and satisfaction in the work that we're doing.
Okay, so I'm gonna get woo-woo now because I've just recently was introduced to human design, and it's the same concept. You're designed in a certain way, and that your life is best and you are most successful when you do things that are in alignment with your design.
Yes.
So that is like knowing the thing that you are, your zone of genius, your skill that you bring to this world, whatever your purpose is. When you're doing that and then you're engaging with the world in the way that is best for you,
yes,
things align.
Yes. That's my ministry. That's pretty much all I preach to everyone.
So did becoming an entrepreneur, did that come from recognizing your zone of genius and saying, this is what I can offer to the world in this way? Or where did that come from?
Yes, definitely that. Exactly what you just said. Recognizing my zone of genius, not as clearly as I do right now, right? I'm not a psychic. Okay. So now I very clearly can see like where my zone of genius really falls into the broader picture of my life. But I do think I had an itch that said, when I'm working on these kind of programs, I think I know kind of how I could design them to be more effective for the people we're serving. I had that itch. I also had the itch for entrepreneurship in general. Oh my gosh, I'm forgetting the podcast. What's the NPR podcast where they go into like the businesses? Oh my goodness, I can't believe I'm forgetting it. There is an NPR podcast, and
I'm like, do I know this one?
yes.
I don't know.
Yes, it's really popular, but there's an NPR podcast and he goes into kind of the background and the founder stories for all businesses. And I used to binge that on the way to work. It was so curious about how people started businesses, how they got it done, where did the idea come from. And that made it feel so approachable. I was like, oh, these people are no different than me. They just had an idea and worked hard enough to get it done. And then I would say the third thing was just my dad. My dad is an entrepreneur. He started his own business during the recession. I witnessed him build a business from scratch. And I also witnessed how he creates work-life balance. And I said, I want to be more like my dad. So those are kind of like the three factors, I would say.
I want to hear more about your dad's work-life balance.
Yeah.
And how that shapes you now.
I tell people all the time, my dad is my model. My dad is my 1,000%. I'm copy paste to my dad, except for like 30 years younger. But yeah, I mean, I've witnessed my dad build his business, and he stepped out of corporate America to build his business, and he didn't get it right initially. Like, I mean, would argue that he did get it right as, men, but yeah, he didn't get it right 24/7 the second that he started, but I saw the grit, the strategy, the resources, also the family involvement, what it took, like partnership, like with my mom. I witnessed that firsthand. And I saw that, it takes time to build a business. It takes time to figure out where it is where you fall in the market and like what it takes and pricing and all of that jazz. And I was old enough to like witness that. And my dad also left corporate America believing that he was going to do everything on his own terms. And so he is very big on, he wakes up, he lives in Atlanta. He goes to the Snow Mountain every single day, walks around 5 miles, doesn't get started till noon, works when when his energy levels are most aligned. He will work on vacation. Like if he's on vacation, he'll work, but he doesn't ever let anything kind of work does not define him by any means, but he gets things done. And I think when I was like coming into corporate America, I witnessed the toll it takes on, the monotony and the rat race and blah, blah, blah. And then I was seeing my dad and I was like, wait, there's another option. And so I think like he was my model for how I can make it work, and that it wasn't unrealistic for me to create a business and also build balance into that as well. That wasn't a pipe dream.
It's amazing that you had that in your life as a model, because I tell people often, I did not have a similar model in the sense that I grew up with parents who both were in the military. They met in the military.
Mm-hmm.
My mom later became a nurse.
Mm-hmm.
Most of my family, on both sides of my family, was also in the military or in some other form of public service.
Mm-hmm.
And I went into public service for over 20 years. Mm-hmm. And so when it came to thinking about, I left my job in 2023 and what did I want to do next? Mm-hmm. It took time and a book club that I love to get me to the point where it felt like being an entrepreneur was accessible to me. Mm-hmm. It was just not something that had been I knew people who were
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneurs, and I knew people who were able to do that, but also importantly, that also had balance
Mm-hmm.
and like had a way of structuring their life so that they could do that thing that they were passionate about, but also not sacrifice everything else for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I'm sure this isn't surprising to you. I say it all the time. It's hard to be what you can't see, right? It's super hard. Like obviously you can dream, but part of part of what creates access is you being able to see yourself in a story, a person, a vision that feels very tangible and real to you. And so I don't think that's surprising. And it's also why I personally feel a sense of responsibility to anyone that like reaches out to me that's like, oh, I'm curious to be like, how can I help you? How can I make this feel real to you? Because there's so many people that I explained this pipe dream to that answered the call for me when I was just like this girl that was like, I think I could do this. And they helped me make it real. And so I just believe like anything that's on your heart, anything that you see the vision for, but other people don't, like find someone that can support that can support hearing your dreams and instead of feeling like what you feel is crazy because that's what kind of creates the access and that's what honestly brings things to life.
And you work in the education space. So, how does this philosophy and how does what you have learned from your father and maybe even other things that were going on in your life, how does that show up in the work that you do now?
It shows up in the work that I do now. Actually, like reflecting, you make me realize, like maybe I'm like just reflecting on like the impact my dad has had on my life too. It's I think why I'm passionate about health and wellness is also because of my dad. So I think I've also taken that angle because my dad's always been super health conscious. My parents are Jamaican, so I'm first generation. So it's like my dad, he's kind of just like shifted his mentality around how he values his health and his wellness. And that is something that has been passed down to like me and my sister. And so I think that something to do with that and the value of health, I think has played a role in my career because I do think health is wealth and it gives us the freedom to live the life that we have when we're feeling healthy and we're feeling well and we're feeling like we have the agency to do whatever it is that we want in our life. I think health is foundational to that. And so that I think that has pushed me into the public health space. And I think in terms of my dad, he's probably also influenced me in regards to continuous learning, which I think
Mhm.
has really pushed me into the space of just really valuing how we learn and really being passionate about like continuous learning and helping other people learn better, which is kind of a premise for my business. And then also, I would say, like I said, like the entrepreneurship angle. So feeling like you don't have to even if you're passionate about health, even if you're passionate about learning, you can also carve your own space on like what that looks like and how it works. And so I think like that's influenced my business too.
I am curious to go back to the health aspect of what you learned. Was that a shift for your father and in your family culturally to prioritize health and to make that a center of a way of being?
Yeah, absolutely.
Where
Absolutely.
did what were the expectations or what would somebody expect behavior to be related to health and work
Mhm.
for someone who was raised like just like you, someone who had a similar background to you?
I think I think of the average four-person household, two girls, two parents, like I think everyone is conscious of what's healthy and what's unhealthy and you should be active and you should I think everyone is clear on the fundamentals. I think that that is clear, in most people's minds. But I would say the way it kind of like showed up in our family is that some things felt very default. Like it didn't look like we built it into our family that it felt like a habit. It felt like a default for the healthy option, right? So like being active didn't feel like now it's time for us to get active, right? It was just a thing. Like we just knew Saturdays, my dad's gonna go to the mountain. He ran races a lot. Like we run races all the time together because it's just something that we just did and it's just baked into the culture of our family. But I think for maybe a lot of families it may not feel as default as it did, but that's not necessarily surprising because if you think about how culture is kind of developed, even if you think about on the societal level, it's because things that you do innately. So it's like, what kind of messages are you sending innately to whatever? You could sub your community, your family, that gets baked into the culture. And I think the culture that was baked into my family was one around valuing your health, valuing, you know, the social emotional connections between us, like how we're connected to each other, how we eat, things like that.
Well, we work in public health. And so what you say is really important from the perspective of the messages that we put out and the way that we want to be is shaped by the people around us, the infrastructure around us. So you could be like naturally disposed to being very active, but you live in an environment where you don't have safe, sidewalks, protected sidewalks or protected bike lanes, or you don't have access to trails or whatever it is that the environment like kind of prevents you from following up on that thing that does feel very natural to you. And so you have to make an adjustment that maybe is out of alignment with who you are.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And I mean, that's why I think all of us in public health know that the policies and programs that are truly going to have the most impact are going to take place on the systemic level. It's, yes, not taking away from the fact that we want to provide healthy food and we want to provide access to healthy foods in every community across the country. But we know that it's not just about providing the access. It's also rooting out those root causes that make it difficult for you to have that choice in the first place. And so it's going to take interventions on every single level, but we know that you can't do it without changes on the policy level or even the community level.
So first of all, this is what I say all the time. I'm like, we have to do the work on every level. This is why I feel very strongly about RFK's push for healthy foods and changing America's diet. Like, yeah, we do need access to healthy food. We definitely have a different relationship with food in this country than many other developed countries. But that's not going to solve our problems. Because people still don't have grocery stores in their neighborhoods. People who, live more than a mile, maybe even longer, 5 miles, 10 miles from a place where they can get fresh food. And you also need to be able to exercise and you need to be able to have a lifestyle where you can be healthy. And so that's what it's like.
You need time to prepare the food. You need time to get off work so that you can go to the grocery store at real hours to pick up the food.
You need a car to get to the grocery store or public transportation.
Yeah, it's so many factors. And really quickly too, I just want to make a plug for any public health folks. I actually read the new Surgeon General. Her name's 𝐃𝐨𝐧'𝐭. I read her book last year because it kind of talks about these root causes of the health challenges that we have in this country. And I read it and I thought it was so interesting the way that she framed it. But part of the challenge and the issue that I had was around the fact that a lot came down to personal choice. And a lot came down to choosing organic foods and, really being conscious of how you're sourcing these foods and where they're coming from. And I'm not taking away from the fact that all of that is very true. However, the lens that was missing is exactly what we're talking about right now. So it's yes, agreed. We should be thinking about where our food is being sourced from and only eating foods that are going to fuel our body. However, if we don't have access to, we don't know where our closest farm is, what do you want people to do next? Right. And that wasn't really addressed. So that's part of the challenge that I think that we have right now is obviously pushing healthy access to foods, but also we have to be real about the real challenges that exist.
I mean, I know we're going off on a public health tangent, but I think this plays into this idea of how we can be our best selves. And personal choice matters, but our choices, if our choices are limited, then our health is limited.
Yeah.
And it's these systems level things that shape our health do have to be addressed. And that includes for things like how we take care of ourselves, not just what we eat and how we exercise, but whether or not mental health care is accessible to us. Yeah. And so it's, a lot of people do believe in that it's personal choice and personal responsibility, but divorce that from the reality that you can only choose from what's in your environment.
Yeah, you can only choose what's in your environment. And that's why I think I mentioned it earlier. I'm just so big on the reason why I'm so passionate, I think, about health and wellness is because I think it does give us, when you feel well, it gives you the agency to live the life that you desire. And that's how my brain connects it. And I know that could be different for everyone. But when you don't have the choice to choose healthy options, it feels to me that you don't have the choice to live the life that you desire. And that to me is what I feel passionate about, because I personally want people to live their best, to be their best selves. And to me, that encompasses feeling healthy, feeling whole, feeling connected, and feeling purpose driven.
What are some things that you do to support people in finding those ways to be healthy and well, to find tools to live their best lives?
Yeah. This is something I think about a lot. I think about a lot because I think all of us that come from service-based profession, we want to save the world. We see the root cause and we're like, I want to help. I want to like make a difference. Like, why can't I like? And so something I've really been toying with I would say the last 2 years, is figuring out, okay, Kim, you cannot change the world. I'm not downplaying myself. I know I can't change the world. I have a finite limit of what I can do. And so I've really been trying to think about, okay, given my zone of genius, kind of going back to our previous conversation, how can I help people feel whole? How can I help people live so they can be their best selves? And so, what I've really been zoning in on is I have a creative side of me, which we haven't talked about yet, with calligraphy. I'm obviously super passionate about public health, which we've talked about already. And then I also am really big on just the overall value of reflection via journaling. But I know journaling sounds like a diary, but I think what I'm really getting at is reflection. And so one of the ways that I'm hoping to tie all of them together is really building reflection tools for professionals to help them evaluate these constant iterations we need to make in our lives that we know best. So not me, not you, Dawn. We're our best guide, but helping folks develop more of a guided reflection tool to help them iterate on what they know for their life, and want to bring to fruition. So that's something that I think I could personally, the tiny bit that I can do to make an impact. And so that's what I want to do. I want to bring it to life, but like with everything with entrepreneurship, which I think you can agree with, everything's a process. So, part of the balance is I'm not going to rush it. I know when it's supposed to come to life, it's going to come to life. And I am going to let it develop as it can. I would say I'm really just zoning in on doing what I can within my zone of genius. And so that's where I've landed to like help folks and be their best selves.
It's such an important point to say we have to trust the timing of our life.
Mm-hmm.
Because I am one of those people too, where I'm like, I want it done now. I have this idea. I want it to bring it to life immediately.
Yeah.
And I'm one of those people's also at risk of when I'm in the zone, I will just stay in the zone and it'll be like 4 a.m. and I'll be like, but my ideas are still so fresh.
I know. Same here. And if you give me the time and space, I will bring it to life in 2 months, right? Like a month. If you give me time and space, I'll do it. But that's part of balance I think entrepreneurship has taught me that I'm very grateful for. It's just like you have to trust the timing of your life. There's so many things that are going to come your way that you will never see, both good and bad. And you can't make, there's no need to make like quick decisions because everything will always play out the way it needs to.
Did you read Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert?
I did.
Okay, so then you probably know where I'm going with this, but it's this idea that ideas will come to you.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe the energy is right in your life and the circumstances are aligned so that you can bring that idea to life. And maybe they aren't. And then they'll go to another vessel that's ready to do it, that's ready to act on it. And that's just what was meant to be.
Yeah, that's what's meant to be. I know that can also be very woo-woo for people. They're like, what are you talking about? I got to do something tomorrow. What am I waiting on? I don't think I'm talking about it, or we're talking about it in that way. It's like you have a program developed, go develop a program. It's supposed to be, it has a deadline, go do that. But I think it's for all of us who think of making an impact and are open to what it looks like, but have that itch that, I know that I have to, in your heart of hearts that you have to bring something to life. I think for all of us who are sitting in that camp, let things marinate and just let it develop as it needs to, and trust that it will come to life when it needs to, through you or someone else.
Which is so beautiful, because when we are not attached to something, it's such a place of flow to be in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because it needs to be in the world, not because you brought it, but because it needs to be in the world.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For sure. And that's what we're talking about. I want people to find flow in their life. I want people to be in flow. I want people to feel like they're doing their best work. I want people to feel like they're operating, top of license, doing with the skill sets that they were born to do. That's my dream for everyone, because I think that gives you so much satisfaction and fulfillment that you also can give to others, that also inspires others to do the same too.
Well, speaking of flow, I'm going to make a really terrible segue into the flowing language that comes out with calligraphy.
Nice.
Although I guess I could just tie it to the discussion we were having about tools for people to reflect.
Yes.
But the reason that I first became aware of you was at the APHA conference that I mentioned.
Yeah.
And this is a conference for folks who aren't familiar with it, where there are 8, 10, 12,000 people.
A lot of people, yeah.
There are a lot of people. There are so many offerings. It is easy to get into decision paralysis because there are so many choices. But I saw your session in the wellness corner that was calligraphy and wellness, mental health and calligraphy.
Yeah.
And I said, I have to go take this. And then it just so happened that our mutual friend, Miss Montrese McNeil Ransom, said, y'all have to meet each other.
I know. See?
So it was meant to be.
It was meant to be.
Tell me more about calligraphy and what it means to you.
Yes, it was meant to be. So calligraphy was actually something I picked up during the pandemic. I've always had decent handwriting. So even growing up, when I was like a teenager, folks used to ask me to write their wedding invitations. And I used to say no, because I didn't want to do that. I was like, I just have decent handwriting. I'm not about to do your wedding invitation. But my mom actually got me a calligraphy toolkit, that you can buy from Michael's or whatever. And when I was a teenager, and I threw it to the side. And so it was during the pandemic that I was like, we have time. So in the, whatever you want to call it, the depression that we were all in, I decided, an ad popped up on my Facebook for a calligraphy journal. And I said, okay, let me teach myself. And so that was the point that completely changed it for me, because whenever I taught myself, I fell in love with it. And I was like, this is great. I love it. I love how it forces me to disconnect from the screen. I love that it's something that I'm not good at. It's hard. It was really hard for me to get initially. And so I love that, because, it's something I can learn, and, and I could see all the inspiration online. I'm like, what it could be. And so I really like that. And then as I grown in my calligraphy journey, I've realized how much I just really love quotes. I love quotes. I'm constantly saving quotes in my notes app. And so I realized that, if I do calligraphy, I have the opportunity to bring my quotes, bring words to life. And I love quotes. I can make them so much prettier. And then from there, it's kind of transformed to, as I was being able to letter quotes more, I realized, this is very meditative. And so I was turning quotes into journal prompts. So it slowed me down even further. That's where I've landed right now, where it's become this, it's become a hobby for me, but it's also kind of self-care for me. Anytime I do have time, I could go letter all day. I could find a quote and just letter on my own, put on music, and it feels very therapeutic to me. And so through COVID, I've built a side business. Calligraphy is my side business, but I built a side business. And I've also been able to work with brands, retail brands like Macy's and Nordstrom and Bloomingdale's, anyone that wants to provide personalized items for customers. I typically work with brands like that to sit in the shop for, X amount of hours, and I'll engrave perfumes, or I'll write cards, or whatever it is. So I found a way just to make it fun for me. But calligraphy is such a self-care activity for me that I try to balance not doing more business. I do less business than what it is as a hobby or activity for me, because I don't want it to take away from the fact that I love it as an art form. I love it because it gives me a lot mentally with my overall well-being, and I don't want to get capitalism to take that away.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
Well, and it's important to set those kind of boundaries around the things that we love.
Yes.
I remember reading an article about a runner who was really good. I think she ran marathons, or she was a distance runner. And then she was running competitively, and her performance started dropping. And it was because she just felt so much pressure
Mhm.
as part of her training and to perform and to compete that she just stopped loving running. And you definitely don't want to get to that point, and that's also about, like, being productive and doing the performance, and that's most of our work lives too, is producing and performing,
Producing and performing.
and it's easy to have the joy sucked out of it
Mhm.
when you're just producing and performing.
Yes, absolutely. And that's definitely where I've reached with, like, my calligraphy business, and that's why I have a hard boundary with my calligraphy business. Like, I found a way to, like, make money off of it, but I have the hard boundary that I will never strategize the way that I do with my consulting business in a way that it would take away from what I value as an art form and what I value as a way for it to slow me down, and just help me mentally, emotionally, and all of that.
I am curious about what people's experiences are of being exposed to calligraphy. For me, sitting in that workshop in the middle of this very busy environment
Mhm.
and just taking time to do these really lovely soft strokes
Mhm.
was so calming.
Mhm.
And it was something I had never thought of. And it's also something I'm not good at either. So
Mhm.
I love that you said that because it's really important that we do things that we're not good at.
Very important.
What do people say to you about doing these activities and getting involved, like doing calligraphy and
Mhm.
sitting still and
Mhm.
meditating almost,
Yeah.
really in this process of scripting?
No, I would love to say that everyone that takes my workshops is like, "Oh my gosh, you changed my life. Thank you." But if I'm being honest, I volunteer also at a local high school, not on a regular basis, but they invite me in to teach calligraphy, same exact thing to high school students. They're middle school, high school, all girls school. Taught them, and one student has actually came up to me and said, "Thank you, Miss Kimberly, but I don't think this is for me." And so I say that because, yes, you're on one end of the spectrum. You took it, you never even thought about it. This could be very meditative to me. I loved having to slow down. And on the other end, I've had people that are like, I see where you're going with this, but calligraphy is not for me. And I think that's an important distinction because there are going to be various tools that we all engage with that will help our mental and emotional well-being. And one tool is not for everybody. For me, calligraphy is that. There's no doubt. I have found my key. My only goal for introducing calligraphy is that if there's also someone else that has an affinity for pretty handwriting or an affinity for writing in any form, calligraphy, or maybe some folks are painters and they want to learn calligraphy. If you have an affinity for any of that and then you try something like calligraphy and it does do for you what it does for me, then that feels like a win. But I also tell people all the time, I am not selling calligraphy. Calligraphy has been a tool that has helped my well-being, and I want to encourage other people to find that tool for themselves that also helps their well-being. And it may not be calligraphy, but please let this be an inspiration for you to find your thing too.
I say that when I do trainings or workshops where I talk a lot about mental health and well-being,
Mhm.
because you're right, what works for one of us isn't going to work for all of us.
Mhm.
And I think that's part of our role is to say, here is what is out there for
Mhm.
you. Try
Mhm.
these things.
Mhm.
Maybe journal. I hear a lot of people say, I hate journaling. I love journaling, but like, it is not for everyone.
Mhm. Mhm.
And and so what can you do instead? So we're just saying, let's introduce you to some different techniques.
Mhm.
Choose what works for you and let go of everything else.
Yes, absolutely. And what I tell people all the time whenever I talk about the connection between calligraphy and well-being is that, okay, yes, it's not calligraphy, but I know the foundational core components that make calligraphy beneficial for my well-being, I think you could find in something else. So that's something that allows you to disconnect. What allows you to disconnect from the hustle and bustle, the day-to-day? What allows you just to, disconnect for a second? What allows you to slow down? What's something that forces you to just stop? Not something that forces you to type, not something that forces you to run out the door. What forces you to just like slow down for a second? What's something that forces you to potentially reflect, right? Reflect for a second, right? Think about what you're doing. Maybe not even a journal prompt, Dawn. It's just like what makes you like reflect on like what you're doing to be more conscious and be more present about what it is that you're doing and what's something that like gives back to you in return, right? So something that you ended it, even if you're bad at it, you're like, you know what? I actually, that wasn't too bad, right? And I could sub lots of things for that. Maybe it's running, walking, right? Maybe it's painting. Maybe it's baking. It's going to be different for everyone. But I think when we all sit back and think about what are those kind of components that make us foster our sense of well-being, we would find similarities, right? If it's calligraphy or if it's creating a flower bouquet.
Now, those are like I would say smaller activities like
Mm-hmm.
flower bouquets
Mm-hmm.
and painting and things. I was thinking pottery.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You can also take a break in a big way.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that we cannot end this conversation without talking about a big break that you took.
Mm-hmm.
You took a sabbatical. And I think you're the first person that is going to appear on the show who has taken a sabbatical that I know of.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Tell
Yeah.
me about that and what led you to wanting to take one and what it's done for you.
Yeah, great segue. I'd say I took the sabbatical for all the reasons that I said. I engaged with calligraphy. I needed a means to disconnect. I needed a means to slow down. I needed a means to be more present, and I needed something that gave back to me. And so a sabbatical allowed me to do that. I am also in the ministry of breaks are important and rest is important. Like, no one can convince me otherwise. It's my hard boundary for my life. You just won't find me overworking at this point in my life. You just won't. So I think a sabbatical naturally was attractive to me because I knew that I couldn't just jump from corporate to running my own business. I felt like in my soul, I felt like I needed I needed an opportunity to have a clear break and to think clearly. And so a sabbatical allowed me to do that. So that's what I did. And it wasn't super long. I mean, some people take whole year sabbaticals, right? I took a sabbatical. I'm also coming up on my second anniversary for when I left my job and where I call it my retirement day. So I took off the summer pretty much.
That's a nice break. You know what? It's really interesting too from a human design perspective to take a break during the summer is very
Yes.
not necessarily following what the season is telling you to do.
Yes.
But it sounds like it's something that you still needed and it's okay to do that. If the season is calling you to rest,
Mm-hmm.
even when everything around you is bustling and growing and active, then you rest.
But you know what? The reason why it also ties to human design is because I love being outside. Love it. I could sit outside all day, and doing my sabbatical during the summer, even though it's hustling and bustling and there's things to do, it allowed me to be outside. I took so many walks around the park in our neighborhood. And I sat outside and just chatted on the phone with friends and watched birds zip around. And I wouldn't have been able to do that if I took the break during the winter time. So it did actually feel aligned with me because I just love being outside in the outdoors.
Do you find that you're maintaining some of those practices, like watching the birds go by and reading a book and taking long walks, even though you're done past your sabbatical?
Yes, absolutely. I think it's one of those things, kind of what I've talked about, like with my dad. It feels so ingrained in who I am right now. It's only been 2 years, but it's the way I do life now. I wake up, I drop my daughter off, I walk around my neighborhood. I close down my laptop whenever I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'll call a friend. I'll wake up maybe early if I have to finish something that I left early because I was feeling tired. But like, I manage my life in a way that it allows the things that fuel me to be an integral part of like how I do life now.
I would love to get to a point where if everything feels like default, like I'm still working toward that.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned walking, dropping your daughter off and then going for a walk.
Mm-hmm.
2 days a week, I've been trying to go to Pilates and then walk my dog in the morning. And so I'm really not getting started with, work until after 11. And it is really a mental challenge to actively reframe
Mm-hmm.
that it is perfectly fine for me to go and walk in the morning and go to do fitness or do anything else for that matter and not get started on doing work or being productive until later in the day.
Mm-hmm.
And it actually makes me better because I'm starting my day with movement and I feel good. My body feels good.
Mm-hmm.
And then I can go about my afternoon and I just feel, very relaxed as I enter into the things that I do need to do.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, that's something I'm actively reframing. And so I would love to get to the point where it's a default eventually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, there's so many influences in all of our lives, but I think for me personally, I can speak to the fact that I'm just always holding perspective in my hand. So there's very little things that like, and I'm type B. I have a type B personality. That's the other thing. I don't really have a strict way that I do life at all. I'm very flexible. But I think holding perspective and just constantly thinking about the future and also the past and like value of like right now, when I think ahead, I'm like, will I regret that walk when I'm 80? No, I'm not.
Right.
I'm not. I'm going to value that walk. What I am going to regret is that I answered that email that can be answered 2 hours from now. And I understand the sense of urgency. I understand there's definitely a level of privilege in being able to control your time. So I own that 1,000%. But I think that so many parts of me holds the perspective of what matters in my life, and there's nothing that shakes that.
I couldn't have said it better. I mean, my test is when I'm 80 and I'm sitting on my porch in my rocking chair, am I going to be upset that I didn't do something or did do something? You know, I look at it from that perspective. Like looking back when I'm 80 years old, what will I have thought about this decision?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I think about this decision. Yeah. And I mean, and it's very real. And, you know, I don't want to take this morbid, but we all have folks in our lives that we've left to cancer, right? Heart attack. I think about that. If I'm on a hospital bed, am I going to regret the email that I didn't send? Or am I going to regret that opportunity that I had to like get fresh air or spend quality time with blah, 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 or engage in something? There's so many luxuries that we all have in our lives that people take for granted, despite what the world looks like, that I think we all just have blinders on because we just don't realize how much we have at our hands every single day to be grateful for.
Love that you brought it full circle to gratitude. On that note, we've had a really good conversation, a great conversation.
Yes.
What is one thing that you are taking away from our time together today?
Oh my gosh, so much. I think you've just really helped me reflect on my journey in a different way. And I think I'm hearing myself in a new light. And so I'm kind of taking away things that maybe I like should lean into more and then also do a little bit less because of like, you know, your last questions. I'm like, you know, actually answering them. So I think I'm taking away a lot about my journey and things I want to keep on doing and do differently as a result of this conversation.
I am also taking away things that I want to do differently and just thinking about having perspective like you were sharing and just being able to keep that front and center and in making choices about how I spend my time and energy. And I think that's a lesson all of us and listeners can also take away. Mm-hmm. So I really want to thank you for and add to the gratitude that you're in this season of your life and say thank you for being here and for being part of Work is Third.
Thank you for inviting me. I love, obviously, the premise for Work is Third. And it's just also just a delight to be in community with folks who get you and, you know, are on the same wavelength and want to have the same impact in this world. So thank you.
Thanks for listening. I hope you're leaving this episode feeling just a little bit softer and a whole lot more seen. Kimberly reminded us that sometimes the most productive thing we can do is pause, whether it's a walk after a drop-off, a sabbatical in the sunshine, or a few quiet minutes with a pen in hand. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend who needs permission to take a breath. And don't forget to check out the show notes for links to Kimberly's work. Want more like this? Head to 𝐿_third.com where you can leave me a voice message and you can sign up for the Better Boundaries brief. Until next time, put yourself first. The rest will follow.